There's something I want to show you about how I handle paper primarily, but not just paper. And it's a simple little trick that I apply. It's a nice technique to load material, certain kinds of material, and it has a double benefit. I call it the smile. What I do is I cut a very slight curve, which looks like a very light smile, into the media. And I do this so that when I load the media goes through the printer with a nice tip of the apex of the curve, and it will almost always travel through the pinch rollers without ever getting kind of stuck. I load all of my media manually. I do not use the auto load feature on any of the latex printers, except when I'm using the attachment to load fabric. In that case, I will, and if I'm using the media loader, I will use the automatic feature because it will sense the edges of the plastic piece I'm loading through, and it will kind of grip it, and it will push it forward into the curing, past the platen, and then through the curing tunnel, and then out the front. That will allow that to load fabric quite nicely. And if you notice that tool, the loading accessory is in a curve. The curve makes things easier to load through the printer. So I routinely will cut a little curve in it. The other advantage to this is when I cut that curve, I use it sometimes if I'm not going to put it right on the take-up roll, but I'm going to apply it to the take-up roll as it's running. My preference is always to use 2-inch standard masking tape, not the blue painter's tape that doesn't have enough adhesive. I like the standard masking tape. Myself, I use 3M, and I put it right in the center here as a single piece. That way, when I'm loading it onto the take-up reel, I only have to put one piece of tape on. I'm not trying to load it from two positions. If you don't get that then there's a possibility that you're going to have a torque in the material, and that would be especially troublesome if it were paper. Because if paper travels a certain distance and you have it sort of pushed askew onto the take-up reel, that memory, that twist, is eventually going to track back through, and you could end up with a head strike. So when I'm loading this way and I want to go straight to the take-up reel, I'll put a single piece of 2-inch tape right in the center, and that will allow it to load on the take-up reel while it's running, and it will attach perfectly. So it's a double benefit. Both the loading is easy, and then it goes right to the take-up reel. Again, I manually load everything. So I'm always going to lift the pinch rollers to bring the media through, and that's the way I prefer to load everything. Just some things that I recommend, easy ways to load the material, make your life a little bit simpler, allow things to travel through the printer more reliably, and then also just some best practices based on my own experience and my own recommendations. You may find other ways to do this that you prefer. That's perfectly fine. These are just ways that I like to approach the printer because I found loading so many rolls of media that this technique can be helpful with a lot of media. It also allows me to load very easily and very reliably onto the take-up reel.